Good morning, black people. It's actually 12:04 p.m. in Dallas, Texas. It's August 28, 2020. Look, I'm just gonna be straight. You're being set up right now. What I just found online is incredibly disturbing. Part of what I've been doing here in Texas is, among other things, investigating the relationship between municipal bonds and bonding for first responders and law enforcement. I've been focused specifically on Texas because each state has a very specific kind of legal situation regarding not only police but also the sheriffs and the constables and or manners in which they intersect with federal law enforcement. This is part of what I went to the Chicago Department of Justice in August of 2016 to do. I'd gone down to the Department of Justice in Chicago, in the downtown area of Chicago. I dropped off some reports because I understood at that time there had been a request for the Department of Justice to investigate police shootings that were occurring in Chicago. Now, shortly after that, I experienced a number of life events that compelled me to flee the state. I was not in a position that I was actually safe in the state of Illinois. I had to leave. I came to Texas. I've been dealing with things as I can. And in the process of that, I have maintained my efforts to investigate what I believe is a connection between municipal bond issues and fraud and other kinds of crime in connection with the issuance of municipal bonds and other kinds of public financing that is a form of bond, and the connection with incidents involving violence between people and law enforcement. One of the things was specifically concerned about is that local law enforcement police officers have a different kind of liability coverage for a police based shooting or an injury or fatality that occurs in connection with a police officer than other kinds of law enforcement, like the sheriffs or the constables, and certainly different than federal agents who may be killed on the job or that may kill people while they're on the job. Now, thus far, I've received no response from any law enforcement agency. My efforts to try to engage in good faith with law enforcement around my concerns of manipulation, including in connection with the benefits or the other matters attending to the death of a police officer and the public events associated with the death of a police officer, like the funeral, and other things that are going on concurrently, no one's responded to me. But rather, I've had several reports and I have had several litigious efforts stolen and used in perpetuation of more fraud that serves to reaffirm and replicate the racialization of this pattern that is specifically attributed to financial motivations above and beyond anybody's alleged espousal of a commitment to racial justice. I will not deny that I am incredibly frustrated that nobody seems to take these frauds involving bonds and the legacy of manipulation of municipal bonds and the other kinds of sureties and bonding that is necessary for performance of certain duties seriously enough to get back to me in order to prevent an escalation that leads to a fatality. In this year in 2020, there have been a number of highly publicized shootings by police, primarily of people of African American descent or identified as African American or black. But the thing is, in every single case that comes to the public, there is a concurrent municipal bond issue. And there is a very specific relationship between the name of the person alleged to be injured or killed and some sort of case law reference. This lets me know that this is a premeditated orchestration being effectuated by people that either themselves are lawyers or that have lawyers that believe for whatever reason, and I allege because of cover of sovereign immunity, that they're going to get away with intentionally orchestrating scenarios, leveraging risk in order to liquidate assets and manipulate and socially engineer contrived events in order to exacerbate a political agenda that is unconstitutional. And yes, it is specifically racist. And yes, it does specifically target the African American community. And there are concurrent, complete misrepresentations of other matters connected to public safety that are attempting to encode in issuances happening now options for execution later to try to artificially contrive increasingly violent or increasingly escalated scenarios that are also supposed to be racialized in an effort to justify a specific use of force up to and including calling in other jurisdictions of law enforcement that aren't even law enforcement. Now, at some point in time, when I attempted to participate myself in a effort to support current movements around racial justice for black people, I found that it A was not consistent with my own experience outside of that specific movement at the time that I'd been involved with previously, and B that there was a racial preclusion on certain kinds of participation that mirrored another organizing form that occurred much prior to, and yet concurrently in some ways to, the one that I had been involved with personally as a journalist, as an editor, and as a community activist in a variety of issues, including ones that were not exclusive to the United States. As a result, I was basically told that I did not have any place to engage with any decision making around the objectives of the movement. And to this day, whatever efforts I have made to go through what I'm told is an acceptable leadership or an acceptable intercessor has been fraught with serious, high crimes. The void of any leadership that is espoused as or alleged to be accepted as the kind of leadership with which I am supposed to acknowledge and cede to when it comes to making decisions about the safety of people that I know or knew or people in my communities. The void of that leadership also accrues evidence that this is a strategically coordinated movement to undermine the country, that your leadership is absolutely 100% aware of how this is working, and for whatever reason, you've got people within the financial services industries that are aiding and abetting an effort to intentionally undermine the federal government system because there are ulterior motives. And not only are there ulterior motives, but the particular kind of racialization of this agenda has the effect of projecting onto other people racial assumptions that are inaccurate, that are dangerous, and that, unfortunately, if allowed to go to where this has every possibility of going, absolutely genocidal. The question then becomes, well, who gets to wield the sword of genocide? Who would be able to afford the sword of genocide? I am just letting you know that this case that I understand is being discussed in the state of California regarding the sheriff's responsibility when they ask somebody that is not a formal employee on the payroll, officially and explicitly covered by any sort of insurance or surety, to step up as a citizen or a civic participant and help out law enforcement to check on somebody that might be distressed and yet bear no responsibility for the consequences, is aimed at you. One way or another, it is somebody's weapon aimed at you, and it's a very dangerous weapon. I'm not going to give another one of these kinds of presentations. There was a specific reason why I was allowed to be disappeared for as long as I was. I have still maintained faith that it was a miscommunication, and at the appropriate time, there would be some understanding of the necessity for a recharacterization. But I didn't know stupid people. Playing stupid isn't going to get any of us anywhere.